Deep divers. Ever feel like, you're paying taxes on, like, everything these days?
Oh, yeah.
Well, imagine getting hit with taxes on your condo fees.
Oh, wow.
Sounds crazy, right?
Yeah.
Like you're paying to keep
Yeah.
the building from falling apart,
Yeah.
and the government wants a cut.
Oof.
Well, that almost happened in the Philippines,
Yeah.
and it sparked a huge Supreme Court case.
Really?
Yeah.
What's wild is this case went way beyond just one building's fees.
Yeah.
Yeah, it forced everyone to think about what a condo corporation really is, what it's supposed to do, and where the government's right to tax begins and ends. It's a deep dive into the heart of property rights taxes and the whole condo living experience.
Okay, so let's get this straight. We're talking about a real showdown, right?
Mm-hmm.
Condo owners versus the tax man.
Absolutely. This case, officially titled, In the Matter of Declaratory Relief on the Validity of BIR Revenue Memorandum, Circular Name 65-2012, clarifying the taxability of association dues, membership fees, and other assessment charges collected by condominium corporations, went all the way to the Supreme Court. It's officially recorded as GR names 215801 and 218924, and the final decision came down on January 15th, 2020.
Wow, January 2020. So this whole thing was going down right before the pandemic hit.
Yeah.
Talk about stressful timing.
Uh-huh.
But back to the case itself. Who were the main players?
On one side, you had the Bureau of Internal Revenue, the BIR, basically the tax collectors. They were trying to enforce this memo, RMC name 65-2012, which basically said those condo fees you pay each month, yeah, those could be subject to a 12% VAT and a 32% income tax.
Whoa, hold on. A 32% income tax on top of the fees we're already paying.
Yeah.
That's outrageous. No wonder people were up in arms.
Exactly. People felt like they were being double taxed for just living in their own homes.
So on the other side of this legal battle, you had First eBank Tower Condominium Corporation fighting for condo owners everywhere.
So it's this one condo corp taking on the entire Philippine tax system. Talk about David versus Goliath.
You could say that. And it all started in the Regional Trial Court, or RTC, which is kind of like the first level of the court system here. First, eBank went to the RTC asking for what's called declaratory relief.
Okay.
It's basically saying, Judge, please clarify what our rights are under this law before things get messy and the BIR starts demanding a ton of money.
Ah, so it's like getting ahead of the problem before it blows up in your face. Smart move.
Definitely. And the RTC actually agreed with First eBank. They said, nope, RMC No. 65-2012 is invalid. The BIR is overstepping its authority. But of course the BIR wasn't going to give up that easily, right?
Of course not. A government agency admitting they're wrong. That's about as likely as winning the lottery. So what happened next? Did they appeal? You bet they did. Both the BIR and First eBank appealed the RTC decision, and that's how the case landed in the Court of Appeals.
Okay.
Which is the next level up in the court system.
So things were getting serious.
Yeah.
From the local court to a higher court. This condo fees case was becoming a national issue, wasn't it?
Absolutely. And here's where it gets interesting. The Court of Appeals threw out both appeals.
Wow.
But not because they agreed or disagreed with the RTC's decision. They said, hold on, this case belongs in the Court of Tax Appeals, not here. Basically, they thought it was a tax issue, not a general legal one.
Okay, so now we've got 3 courts involved.
Yeah.
This is getting more complicated than a soap opera. What did the condo owners do? Just throw in the towel?
Not a chance. They took their case all the way to the top of the Supreme Court, and this is where things take a dramatic turn.
So the little condo corporation that they actually made it to the Supreme Court? That's incredible. I bet they had some seriously sharp lawyers on their side.
Oh, they definitely knew what they were doing. And get this, the Supreme Court actually overturned the Court of Appeals decision.
Really?
They said, nope, the Court of Appeals was the right place for this case, based on how things worked back then. And then they went on to uphold the RTC's original decision.
Okay.
RMC No. 65-2012 was officially invalid.
Boom. Mic drop moment. So the Supreme Court basically sided with the condo owners and told the BIR to back off.
Right.
That's gotta feel good. But what were the main arguments that convinced them?
There were a few key points that really swayed the Supreme Court. First, they emphasized that condo corporations aren't some kind of money-making scheme.
Right.
Their main purpose, as spelled out in RA 4726, also known as the Condominium Act, is to manage and maintain those shared spaces for everyone's benefit. Think about it. The swimming pool, the gym, those are all things that condo owners use together, and the corporation is there to keep them running smoothly.
Right, so it's more like a shared responsibility, not some kind of business venture. Right?
Exactly. And that leads to the second point, those condo fees you pay. They're not really income in the traditional sense. It's more like everyone chipping in to cover the costs of keeping the building in good shape.
Okay, so it's like a collective fund for shared expenses, not profit that the corporation is making off of the owners. That makes a lot of sense.
And this brings us to the biggest point the Supreme Court made, RMC number 65, 2012, was a major overreach by the BIR.
Hmm.
Sure, the BIR commissioner has the power to interpret tax laws, but they can't just create new taxes out of thin air.
So they were basically trying to pull a fast one on condo owners, hoping nobody would notice.
You could say that, but the Supreme Court saw right through it. They basically said, hold up. You can't just change the rules of the game without proper authorization. It was a huge win for the idea that taxes have to be imposed legally and fairly.
This is starting to sound less like a legal case and more like a thriller movie. The little guy taking on the powerful system and winning. But I'm guessing it wasn't all smooth sailing, right? I mean, the case dragged on for 6 years.
Oh, yeah.
Must have been some twists and turns along the way.
Oh, absolutely. You know those legal dramas where they're throwing around terms like certiorari and grave abuse of discretion?
Yeah.
Well, this case had all of that and more. For example, certiorari is basically a legal order from a higher court saying, hey, lower court, let us review your decision. We think you might have messed up.
Uh-huh. So that's how the case kept moving up the ladder. Everyone kept appealing and asking for a higher court to take a look. It's like a legal game of hot potato.
That's a great analogy. And grave abuse of discretion is a fancy way of saying that someone in power, like the BIR commissioner in this case, acted in a way that was totally unreasonable or went against the law.
So the Supreme Court was basically like, BIR, you were totally out of line trying to impose these taxes. You abused your power.
Exactly. And they even used a Latin term to drive the point home, ultra vires. It means beyond one's legal power or authority. Basically, the court was saying the BIR acted like a superhero going rogue. They overstepped their bounds.
Okay, I'm starting to feel like I'm back in law school. But you're explaining it in a way that even I can understand, so kudos to you. But let's get back to what this all means for the average condo owner. So the basic condo fees are safe from taxes. That's the good news, right? But are there any situations where things might get a little tricky?
That's a great question, and you're right, things can get a bit nuanced.
Nuance. That's code for potential headache, isn't it? Come on, spill the beans. What kind of nuances are we talking about?
Well, think about it this way. Basic maintenance repairs, those are all in the clear. But what if a condo corporation starts doing things that are more about making money than just keeping the building running?
Interesting. Like what? Give me some examples.
Let's say the corporation decides to rent out the common spaces for events like weddings or conferences, or maybe they install a bunch of vending machines and start raking in cash from those. Those activities are a bit different from just keeping the lights on and the pool clean, right?
Yeah, that starts to feel more like a business, like they're actually trying to generate profit. So does that mean those kinds of activities could be subject to taxes?
That's the million-dollar question, and unfortunately the Supreme Court didn't give us a clear-cut answer in this particular case. They focused on those basic condo fees, but they left the door open for future debate about what happens when a condo corporation starts generating income from these other activities.
Ugh, so more legal gray areas. This is why lawyers always have jobs right. Always some loophole or ambiguity to argue about. But hold on, I have another question. Remember how First eBank went to court using declaratory relief to get clarity on their rights before the BIR could come after them? Well, did they actually have to pay those taxes while the case was going on? It would be a bummer to win your case 6 years later, but be broke in the meantime.
That's a really insightful question, and it brings up a fascinating legal process called judicial consignation.
Judicial consignation. That sounds intimidating. Is that like some kind of legal jail for your money?
Not quite. It's actually a way to protect yourself in a legal dispute.
Oh, okay.
Think of it like putting the money you might owe into a safe place controlled by the court while you fight your case.
So like a legal escrow account.
Yeah, exactly.
That's actually pretty smart. So First eBank basically said, here's the money we might owe. We'll let the court hold on to it while we figure this whole thing out.
Exactly. And it turns out that was a smart move because remember, the case took 6 years to resolve.
Yeah.
If they just paid the taxes up front, they might never have gotten that money back even after winning the case.
Wow, 6 years. That's longer than some marriages. It really shows how complex this issue was and how important it was for condo owners to have someone fighting for them. But okay, let's say my condo building starts renting out the common spaces for events. Should I be worried about a surprise tax bill?
It's not about panicking. It's about being informed. This case set a precedent, but there are still those gray areas we talked about. The best thing you can do as a condo owner is to stay engaged. Attend those condo corporation meetings, ask questions, and understand how the money is being managed.
Right. Knowledge is power. If you see something that seems off, don't be afraid to speak up. But hey, before we wrap things up, there's one more thing I have to ask you about. Remember that phrase the BIR used, full appreciative living values? It sounds like something out of a cheesy real estate ad.
I know, right?
Like, what were they thinking?
Even the Supreme Court thought it was ridiculous. They basically called it a bunch of meaningless jargon and threw it out.
Oh, wow. So what was the BIR even trying to argue with that phrase? What did it have to do with taxing condo fees?
Well, it seems like they were trying to say that because condo fees contribute to maintaining nice common areas, that automatically increases property values. And since higher property values are good for owners, they should be taxed on those condo fees as a kind of income.
Wait, hold on. So if I repaint my living room and that potentially increases my property value, should I be taxed on the cost of the paint? That sounds completely absurd.
Exactly. The Supreme Court saw right through that logic. They basically said, that's ridiculous. People do things to maintain and improve their homes all the time, and that doesn't make them taxable income.
It's like the BIR was trying to create a whole new category of taxes out of thin air. Thank goodness the Supreme Court put a stop to that.
They definitely set a clear boundary, and that's a huge win for condo owners. This whole case really highlights how important it is to have a legal system that protects individual rights and ensures that the government isn't overstepping its bounds.
Absolutely. Well, I think we've officially unpacked this case and extracted all the juicy nuggets of knowledge. What a wild ride. From a local court to the highest court in the land, this case really went the distance.
It just goes to show that you should never underestimate the power of collective action. The condo owners in this case stood up for their rights, and they won.
Inspiring stuff. So to all our deep divers out there, remember, stay informed, stay engaged, and never be afraid to ask questions.
And if you're ever facing a legal issue that seems confusing or overwhelming, don't hesitate to seek expert advice. There are people out there who can help you navigate the complexities of the legal system and ensure your rights are protected.
Great advice. Well, folks, that brings us to the end of our deep dive into the fascinating world of condo fees and taxes in the Philippines. We hope you found this episode informative, thought-provoking, and maybe even a little bit empowering. If you did, be sure to give us a like, hit that subscribe button, and leave a comment letting us know what other deep dives you'd like us to tackle.
Until next time, keep diving deep and stay curious.